Good afternoon. Welcome to another Listen with Vobes with me, Richard Vobes. Thank you very much for joining me if you have. And if you're joining me live, you're very welcome, of course. And if you're watching the rerun, you're just as welcome. I've got my hat and my scarf. We're going to get back into the car and we're going back in time to 1909 and joining James John Hissey with his book, The Charm of the Road. And you're very welcome to join us. It's going to be fantastic. If you're watching the live, hello to you. And if you're watching the rerun, a very warm welcome as well. And very much looking forward to cracking on. With that, I have a cup of coffee to accompany me, which is slowly getting cold. This is another of those impromptu readings, live as and when. And of course, we are using the following maps just to help us on our way. We have the good old Google Maps, of course, which we will use the satellite and the street view to help us understand what the place is like today. And we'll go back in time, wrong map, but I can use that as well, which is quite handy. And instead, we'll use a different map over here, which is the what do they call it? Geo-reference maps of 1913, the Ordnance Survey map of 1913. And if I just go back to the full screen here, you'll see that it is, I'm just going to move that up a bit, there we go. And you'll see that I'm using these maps, and let's get rid of some of these because we don't need them, and we can zoom in. Now, if I remember rightly, we were in Godstone, and we will see how we get going. Love the slurp, says Stefano. Thank you very much, Stefano. Another slurp then just for you. So this is chapter 5, part 2, and it doesn't really matter if you haven't heard any of the other chapters, really. It's James John Hissey taking a journey in his car with his wife around, at the moment he's in Surrey. So I'll just read and then we'll have a look at the map as and when, so we'll see how we get going. So, after Godstone we kept for a while to the wide main road, which was pleasant enough without being excitingly so. But at a convenient opportunity we left it by the leafy lanes again. Much of the ancient beauty of the land is preserved in the lanes. There you will find the rambling old farmstead with its colony of outbuildings, its barns and its ricks, primitive and picturesque cottages, weather-stained mills with their whirling sails, and here and there a grey gabled manor house, half hidden by ancestral trees, remote in time, if not space, from our aggressive outer world. Poems all. Now, interesting there, he talks about the whirling sails of the windmills. And this is right at the beginning of the end, really, for windmills. It was around that time that the new roller mills had come in at the ports. So instead of windmills turning with the old grinding stone and relying on wind, these were coming pretty much to the end. And many of them were dilapidated and in sorry states. Some of them had burnt down, of course, particularly the wooden mills, because flour is a very volatile material when it's floating about. And soon after 1913 and the First World War, of course, a lot of those mills just fell into disrepute and disuse rather, because they just couldn't compete with the new mechanical roller mills. And yet the roller mills were effectively inferior in terms of the quality of the wheat, because they were too efficient. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So if you are wandering through the lane in search of beauty, if you're wandering through the land in search of beauty, always search for the lanes, for the lane goes through the heart of unspoilt country, and you may perchance make delightful discoveries thereon, as we did that day. And that's still true, I think, to a certain degree, in 100 years later. Hello to Nigel Sadler, lovely to see you there. The lane led us first to Horne, Horne, a village of little interest that long years ago possessed a parson who achieved a certain sort of fame from the fine sermons he preached on Sundays and the choice of sandals he retailed at weekend. Oh, scandals, not sandals. He may have had sandals, but they might have been Jesus' feet. But scandals he retailed on weekdays. A strange mixture, it seems to me. Beyond Horne, we passed through a succession of trees and green fields, to borrow an expression from Dr. Johnson. The country was flat and the scenery somewhat monotonous, but away in the distance, beyond the flat fields, we had a charming prospect of wooded hills, all golden green in the slope of the sun. The hills seemed to call upon us to explore them, so towards the hills we steered our course as directly as the indirect ways allowed. Some country lanes resemble a gigantic maze, so irresponsibly do they wind and wind about that you never feel quite sure of arriving at any point that you're making for, at least without doubling the apparent distance. Fortunate if you arrive where you desire at that. If you go across country over unfamiliar lanes, you must not be in a hurry. The lane is for loitering. It exists for local convenience and not for that of a stranger in the land. But if you simply desire to drive leisurely about country so that the eye may enjoy its charms and pleasantness, then the lane is wholly delightful. Only to the leisurely wanderer is the innermost spirit of the English landscape revealed. Now, he's got a picture here. What is this? It says, a Jacobean home, Smallfield Place, which no doubt he's going to come to at some point. Sorry I can't give you a close-up on that. I ought to set up a second camera in here I used to have my webcam, but it's actually on downstairs. As we drove quietly along, in a daydreamy mood, our senses were quickened by the sight of a grey old Elizabethan Jacobean mansion, must be the one in the picture, many gables and mullioned windows that came into view, and but a stone's throw off the roadway. A picture in stone, a ballad in building, as well as a home for a man. One sees such delightful old houses in paintings often, I fancy, invented out of the artist's romantic imaginings. But here we had the poetic actuality before us, a realised ideal. I shall not readily forget the thrill of pleasure the wholly unexpected vision of it gave us, just too, when the mind, seeking entertainment and finding none, was growing a little weary of the monotony of the dull road and level landscape. He's just told us how delightful these winding lanes are, and then he goes and criticises them. He is a very strange man. It was like coming upon some rare and beautiful but unknown poem quoted in the pages of a prosy book. Now, let's see if we can find Smallfield Place, which I assume is in Surrey, and to do that we will enlist the help over here of the internet search engine. Let me just bring it up on the screen so we can see. So Smallfield Place, somewhere in Surrey, not quite sure, but let's see. Smallfield Place, Surrey, yeah. And I'm guessing it's here. So let's just see, let's get the images up. First of all, that looks a very nice image. There are others here that we can see. I'm just looking for one which maybe this wedding one will give us a nice, let's open it in a new tab. Here we go, look at that. Isn't that rather splendid? And I'm just going to check with my book to see if that is anything like the place that we have. And yes, I can tell you, although you won't see much of it because it'll be out of focus, it is definitely the same. But let's have a look at that one, because that is much more interesting. And we can zoom in a bit there, and if only I could scroll it up and down, it would be better, but there it is. That's a wedding picture. So that's the place that he has gone to, which all looks very nice. Smallfield. I don't know where that is on the map. So let us go to the map now. Somewhere near Horn, he said. So let's just whack that in. We were at Godstone. Smallfield Place, Surrey. And we'll see if it comes out. So he is going all over the place. And here we go. Look at this. Let's have a look on the satellite. There it is. Look at that. Rather magnificent place. We see a tennis court nearby, a big estate. And how much of that can we see by road? Not very much, of course. Didn't expect to. But we might be able to see the entrance here if we just stroll up and have a look. And there it is. Look at that. Let's see if I can inch a bit more. Damn it. Can't quite. There, we get a glimpse of the same place. Isn't that a rather splendid one? So I wonder if he came down this road. What is that? Cogman's Lane. Anyway, so that's where he is. And I'd like to find it. I don't know where that is. I'm going to come out to see where that's near. Smallfield Football Club. So that must be right, okay, it's a place called Smallfield. So we go back there. Oh, sorry. Go back there. Let's have a look on the georeference map and see if we can find it by typing that in. Smallfield, Surrey. We'll bung it in there. See if that comes up. Smallfield. Here it is. Let's get rid of that. Burston, it says here. And Smallfield Place. There it is. Doesn't give us much detail of it. What you can do is change the map, and sometimes that gives you a bit more, but this is quite good. There's Long Pond, and there was a map there, and presumably he came down this road then, I imagine, or he might have come down there's Cogman's Lane, but he's come down from wherever. There's Horn, so he must have meandered. He came through Horn, didn't he? There's Horn. And so he's probably meandered down these little lanes here, something like this, and he's come winding down. Now, I don't know what road that is. Let's just have a look on this map and go back. Is that the A20 something or other? Let's just go back that way. Doesn't tell us what the road is. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, that's where he is. Marvellous. Let's crack on with that. And see what he says about it, if at all. This ancient ivy-clad and time-stained home we discovered to be Smallfield Place, a house with a history, and it looked its part. You cannot precisely define why one old house should impress you more than another, yet such is the case. There is a spirit of place, something more than the eye actually sees, that possesses one and raises thoughts in the mind that cannot be analysed. They are too indefinite for that. Were I a ghost, Smallfield Place is the sort of house I should select to haunt, even though I have no family connection with the place. Yet, as far as we could gather, no spectre had ever favoured it. A clear case of a neglected opportunity. Yes, those ghosts. I'm sure there probably was a ghost. Anyway, let's have a slurp. There we go. I don't know what that is. Right. We were kindly permitted to photograph this interesting old place, and afterwards were fortunate enough to obtain permission to view its quaintly picturesque interior. Now, this is one of the things that I find very interesting about these old books 100 years ago, 120 years ago, whatever, is that very often, you know, these chaps in their cars can drive about, beginning of the time when cars were very new, and can turn up and just sort of talk to the owner of these places and say, "Oh, would you mind if I photographed it?" These days, these places now, you can't get in, gated community, gated fence and all of that. Can't get access to it, and you're unlikely to be able to have permission to photograph it. People are very protective. I love everything that's old. Old friends, old times, old manners, old wine, wrote Goldsmith. He strangely forgot to add to his list old houses. Of course, I mean the right kind of old house, for there are old houses and old houses, as there is old wine and old wine. I've lived for a month in a house built in the days of James I, a house that has suffered hardly any alteration since that day, except for the addition of bathrooms. But it has been kept in perfect order and repair, and never, I think, have I been quite so comfortable in any modern house, although some of the latter were replete with every luxury and convenience, as the estate agent has it. And that is interesting, because I've seen many an old house, a Tudor house, for sale. I saw one in Shropshire some years ago. Beautiful timber-framed house, wattle and daub and thatched roof. And on the outside, totally exquisite, delightful, beautiful, lovely, heavenly. And then I saw the pictures on the estate agent's website, and you could look at it, and they'd hidden every element of the old, all the timber framing, and it was like some inner city London flat, complete with all modern appliances, modern sofas, modern carpet, big television, all of that. And you just think, what was the point of buying a beautiful Elizabethan house if you're going to disguise the inside where you live and cover up all that beautiful ancient stuff? Smallfield is very handy for Gatwick, says Nigel Sadler. Just down the road, probably. Apply in 1910, though. Oh, probably didn't apply in 1910, though. No, probably not. I imagine in 1910, even Croydon hadn't quite got off the ground. But anyway, let's see what else he's going to say about it. The bay windows with their cushioned seats. I love that. Cushioned seat by a bay window. Isn't that nice? The wide open hearth fireplaces, the low beamed ceiling rooms with their panelled walls had such a picturesque, comfortable look. The mullioned windows also, with their many lattice panes, seemed to add to the snugness of the olden chambers, for they gave one the feeling of enclosing space, whilst the modern plate glass windows suggest to me but a glazed void. So perfect is plate glass, it might be solidified air. And having got this luxury in glass, we try to disguise its bareness with lace curtains, which is fascinating observation. It is a wonderful age that we have learnt to live luxuriously rather than pleasantly. And luxury does not always mean real comfort, though many people fondly think it does. Give me a winter's night, panelling around my ancient chamber, the curtains drawn, the deep-cushioned Elizabethan armchair that you sink into with headrests at the top. I have sat in the original article, merely re-cushioned, so that I know what it is, not one of your Wardour Street imitation articles. Give me a blazing firewood on an inglenook hearth, a post-prandial pipe. I love that. What does post-prandial mean? I would love to know what that actually means. Post-prandial. Prandial, presumably that post-prandial must mean anything prandial. Is it like post-driving, post-adventure, post-walking about, ambling about, in other words, an after-travelling pipe. A really interesting book to read, a shaded lamp oil to read by. That is my ideal, genuine comfort. The very absence of any glare or glitter makes for the perfection of restful ease. I write from actual experience, not from poetic fancy. The experience of a month or days, and the experience of a month of days, not of a single day, when the novel surroundings and sentiment of them might arouse feelings of a fictitious ease of the moment. Yes, so in other words, he's been doing that quite a lot. Lovely Julia says, oh, that was the heads up. Well, I'm here now on catch up. Oh, I'm so sorry, Julia. And Holly & Co. says, looking, spiffing, Mr. Vobes, aloe, all. Thank you very much. I've got a slight whistle in my nose, and I apologise if you can hear that. Smallfield Place has a checkered career, and this is what we gathered of its history. Originally, it was erected towards the end of the reign of Edward III. During the reign of James I, the property was purchased by one Edward Bishey, a lawyer, who greatly... Now, probably Bishey is not how it's pronounced, but that's how it's spelled. Bish, is it? A lawyer who was greatly flourished during that period and grew rich by fleecing his wealthy clients. Oh, there's that term, fleecing. Don't forget to fleece them all, as my son said to me once. Bish practically rebuilt the house externally, though within a good deal of interesting 14th century, although a good deal of interesting 14th century work remains. Bish unblushingly boasted that he had bought the place mainly with the money that he had extracted from fools who had no business with it, excusing himself on the score that if I had not fleeced them, some of them, someone else surely would. Well, I guess that's very true. After Bish's day, the old mansion fell into evil times. A portion of it was pulled down and the rest converted into a farmhouse. This, in turn, suffered much from neglect. Then, in the course of years, a new owner happily came into possession of the old place, who lovingly restored it backwards, as far as possible, both externally and internally, to the original intention of its Jacobean architect, and made it sweetly habitable again. And I think there's another picture in here of some of the interior, which I can try and show you, but you know, there's the Inglenook fireplace. I imagine that is it. My Inglenook. And I think he's going on to explore about that. As to the interior of Smallfield, the first thing that pleasantly strikes the visitor is the substantial and finely proportioned oak screen of the 14th century in an excellent state of preservation. This comes between the outer hall and the larger inner hall or withdrawing room. We don't call them that, do we? We just go into the drawing room. Actually, it's the withdrawing room. We withdraw, don't we? Which is interesting. The latter spacious chamber is panelled from floor to ceiling in the good old-fashioned way. Here is a delightful open hearth fireplace with a great oak beam above, and ancient dog irons stand on the hearth below for burning wood. The fireplace, with its ample inglenook, has seats on either side, where hosts, hostesses, and guests may sit and converse at ease in the cheerful glow of blazing logs, enjoying the while the fragrant incense of the burning wood, redolent of the forest whence it came. A nook of rest for host and guest. I saw once cut above a cut on the overbeam of one of these ancient inglenooks, an excellent, suitable motto, it seems to me. A nook of rest for host and guest. Now, I'm just going to have a quick check to see if there are any pictures of the inside of this, and it would be lovely to see that and show that for you in better form. So there are bedrooms. What have we got here? It's obviously now being used as a wedding venue, but we can see this larger. Let's open that in a new tab. Here we go. We can see. Look at that beautiful hall. Let's see if I can just go up, and that's whilst we're there. Beautiful hall. Can't see the, and there's the, as you can see right at the end there, below those portraits, you can see the oak panelling. He said it went out to the ceiling, didn't he? But they must have covered that with something. I'd love to see the inglenook in more detail. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that. But would you like to see a bedroom? This is the stylish bedroom that you can probably now rent quite happily. Look at that. Beautiful, spacious room. Rather pleasant. And if somebody could send me some money, I wouldn't mind buying that place for myself. Although I don't know about the aeroplanes flying overhead. That would be a bit of a bottom. A bottom? I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, there we are. So there we go. So that is its suitable motto. How cheerful and ruddy glow of a log fire. How fantastic the varying shapes of its many-coloured flames that shoot upwards with a subdued roar to the wide open chimney above. Almost it seems to talk to you. How insipid and uninteresting a black coal fire is in comparison. Well, that's very true. Of course, we would all love to have big open fires, would we not? All fires are companionable, but in this respect, one of wood excels all others. It is the fire of the epicure. It radiates an even heat and never is unkindly fierce. It delights the eye and spurs the imagination. It's very true. Julia and I often sit in front of the Hissey, which is a wood-burning stove. We have one in my front room, which is a small one, and then I have the range in the kitchen. And I can tell you, when you have just candlelight and firelight like that, and you sit there on a cold day, a cold evening, in the dark, with a little bit of light, it is very gorgeous. What romances have I not weaved when sitting in wide inglenook at home, listening to the crackling and hissing of the burning logs, watching the mysterious gleams of light and shade playing on the panelled walls and of the big roof beams above, till perchance a log would suddenly fall and a great blaze would cause my cosy study to burst flower-like into a rosy bloom. For I've built myself a real old-fashioned room, a faithful copy as far as I could make it, down to the very hinges on the doors, of one I know and love that was built in the picturesque days of good old Queen Bess, a dream of long years raised. The oak panelling of its walls and the big cross beams of the low ceiling have all been worked by the adze, the stone, the adze. Is it adze? The aids, I never know how you pronounce that, A-D-Z-E, aids, ads, eads, I don't know. The stone mullions of the windows show the tool marks of the mason. The ipsissima saxa he laid there, not being scraped down into a meaningless finish. The grey stone new, yet not smugly so, new and yet possessing distinction, marked with character. A room beautiful with a strange new beauty, born of what it had and what it had not, all the woodwork natural, unpainted and faintly scented of the forest. Everywhere the hand of the craftsman is in evidence. Every inch of the stone and woodwork is varied by the human touch that sanctifies the whole. A room into which, when weary of this troublesome world, I can retire and forget all about it. I have built something more than a mere room surrounded by four walls. I have built a picture, a dream room, where, in the winter of my discontent, shut in from the world without, I sit the clean-winged hearth about. Oh, there's more. There's more to this little stanza. Is it a stanza, little poem thing? Shut in from the world without, I sit the clean-winged hearth about, content to let the bleak wind roar in baffled rage at pane and door, while the red logs before me beat the cold line back with pleasant heat. And even when a louder blast shakes beam and rafter, the merrier up its roaring draughts, the great throat of the chimney laughs. But I'm becoming discursive, a fatal thing for a writer to do unless he has the rare charm and genius of a Lamb or Stevenson. To return to the interior, then, of Smallfield Place, from the inglenook in the large hall, access is, or was, obtained to a hiding hole in the floor above, a relic from the 14th century, when no house of any importance was considered complete without at least one hiding hole, more or less cleverly concealed. Now, the thing is, I mean, what was that for the priests to hide in or whatever, or to hide stuff, to hide loot and what have you. I imagine if everybody knew that was taking place, anybody wanting to rob the place would only have to approach the owner and threaten to some violence or whatever, say, where is your hidey hole, and then grab whatever's in there. It astonished me to learn from an architect that even today hidey holes have not wholly gone out of fashion, for he told me when designing a large modern mansion, this is in 1900s, he was instructed to devise a secret hiding place, which he did. The reason for the construction of this was not revealed, but the fact set me thinking. The oddly shaped dining room of Smallfield Place is also a picturesque apartment with its oak-panelled walls and deep window bays. It seems to call for the gallant gentlemen and stately dames of olden days. The background is there, but the guests have long since departed, never to return again. Here we are shown the original and massive oak table, a table too strong and solid to groan under the heaviest feast that could be spread upon it. Strikes me that these old tables and things that they had, massive great big table, must have been constructed inside the house, because it's like furniture these days. You couldn't have built it and then brought it through the door. The table was too large to be removed. Oh, here we go. How funny is that? The table, we were told, was too large to be removed through either door or window, so it must have been fashioned within the room after the house was built. There we are, man after my own heart. I hadn't read that in advance, honestly. They surely furnished for prosperity. Who furnishes thus? Well, exactly. Very many people don't build their furniture on the inside of their houses. I find that quite extraordinary. We quite expected to be informed that Queen Elizabeth slept one night at Smallfield during her many progresses. She really ought to have done. Unfortunately, the old house lacks this bit of history or tradition that so many less likely looking houses claim. In one old grey stone Cotswold mansion, I was shown the very chamber in which the Virgin Queen slept, though the date of the building, deeply cut in the front, was 1626. But it still makes a pleasant tradition and adds to the value of the house as a showplace. But the showman should be careful about his dates. In this case, Charles I or Cromwell would have served, but Elizabeth, it was impossible. Another old house I was shown in which Charles I, I was told, once was a guest, but here again the date over the door was 1660, which put the story out of court. Of course, it is just possible that the dates on both the houses did not relate to the first building of them, but to some after additions. But from the look of the houses and the position of the dates, I think that's improbable. Perhaps I could find no record in... Besides, I could find no record in country histories or guidebooks of any such visit. So yes, I imagine that some old houses that's all just myth, isn't it? It's just sort of all added up just to make it a bit of fun. However, Smallfield Place can boast of the authentic record of Anne Boleyn having lived there for a time, and a letter she wrote from Smallfield is preserved in the British Museum. As we were leaving the old house, we noticed... Bear with me, caller. We noticed... How many pages have I gone past? Oh, here we are, coming to the end of this chapter, which is a bit of a shame. As we were leaving the old house, we noticed on the gable end of the porch a stone slab with a coat of arms boldly carved thereon, doubtless those of the former owner. On the great oak door we also noticed a large and finely designed wrought iron knocker of twisted scrollwork bearing the date of 1661. The craftsman must have been proud of his production to date such a minor detail, but it is a delightful and shapely specimen of his craft, of which he might be justly proud. A bit of art ironwork worthy of a place in a museum, though I trust it will remain where it is in its proper place till the rusts it away in the days remote. I trust it will remain there where it is in its proper place till it rusts away in days remote. Yes. Anyway, sometimes getting over these sentences which are written in turn of the text. I mean, I do like all that. I think that is quite fun. But anyway, there we are. So I'm just going to rub this eye because it's irritating me a little bit. So apologies for that. That was this rather lovely looking place, which it does now seem to be selling itself as a wedding venue. But just look at those mullioned windows. Aren't they rather spectacular? Most delightful. Anyway, so I'm going to move on to the next chapter, chapter 6. And we'll do a little bit of that and then we'll stop because we've only been going for half an hour. And I feel if I stopped, I would cheat you. But I won't go on for too much longer because I've got to go and throw some logs on the Hissey, which is downstairs. And I don't want it going out. I've only just lit it. I hope that's all right. It might be a bit of a shorter episode today. So chapter 6. Shortly after leaving Smallfield Place, we came to New Hawley, a spreading village of neat, desirable residences, begotten of the railway and not worth remembering or writing about. It has its history to make. After this, we drove to a sequestered country of green fields, orchards, open commons, and meandering streams, a smiling country, with here a grey church tower peeping over the trees, and there a red-roofed farmstead, half drowned in foliage, and here a stretch of woodland, and everywhere green hedges. A sleepy land given over to peaceful farming and full of rural refreshment, where the days pass like dreams. That is, of course, until Gatwick Airport was built, and which now is incredibly noisy all times of the day and night, I imagine. The scenery was essentially English, but none the less beautiful on that account. For my enjoyment, I do not need the stimulus of snow-clad peaks or jagged cliffs or glaciers. Pretentious scenery that compels attention and calls for constant admiration soon wearies me. It is all very wonderful, but the lulling, benevolent English landscape is lovable, which is the better thing, apart from when he is moaning about the monotonous country roads, of course, which he did a few minutes earlier. One is... Sorry, lost my space here. One is the scenery of a blatant oleograph, and the other of a delicate watercolour painting. What is an oleograph? Anybody know? O-L-E-O, graph. Interesting. I'm afraid that the majority of Englishmen only realise the tranquil beauties of their own country when far away in distant lands. Sitting under the open sky one night by a roaring log fire at a spot high amongst the wild mountains of far-off California, I had amongst my chance companions a burly Englishman, with no look of poetry about him. Yet this very man confessed to me, after having crossed the wide Atlantic and the American continent in search of scenery and sport, that a sudden homesickness had come over him which he could not shake off, an intense belonging to be back among the simple green fields of his native land. It is well worth travelling abroad, he said, if only to realise how beautiful is. In the spirit of Naaman of old, captain of the host of the king of Syria, he might have exclaimed, "Are not Abana and Farah rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel?" Who was it who said, was it Rupert Brooks who said, what was it, the quote? Somebody said, "Let us take a train and go back to England again." Something like that. Was that Rupert Brooks? Was it Rupert Brooks who said that? Let us take a train. I'm going to have to look that up just very briefly, because that is a famous quote, and it's quoted in Pimpernel Smith, which I watched not so long ago. But I just want to have a look at that just to see who said that. Was that Rupert Brooks, isn't it? Let us take a train. Is that not the... was it him? Let us take a train and go back to England again. Who said that? Rupert Brooks. God, I will pack a train and get me to England once more. Oh, there we are. Not as good as I thought. Just going to look that reference up. Where is it? I'm looking here. Here it is. Look at that. Let's get rid of that. God, I will pack and take a train and get me to England once again, for England is the one land I know where men with splendid hearts may go. Isn't that very beautiful? That is lovely. And it is, as I say, it's quoted in that film with Leslie, not Leslie Phillips, why do I want to say it? Leslie Howard is what I wanted to say. An oleograph is a printed painting painted with texture to make it appear as an authentic painting, says the lovely Julia, who's looked that up. Isn't that's rather beautiful? These are quotes from Rupert Brooke. I don't know why I'm saying that. Blow out your bugles over the rich dead. There's none of these so lonely and poor of old, but dying has made us rarer gifts than gold. Unkempt about those hedges blows an English unofficial rose. But the one that I love more than anything, God, I will pack and take a train and get me to England once again, for England is the one land I know where men with splendid hearts may go. That is just, that is beautiful. I'm not a great poem enjoyer. I don't really know enough to be able to do it, but that is a very good. So let us carry on. I'm afraid that I could only but roughly trace our route upon the map, for we got lost amongst the pleasant winding lanes, though glad to be lost, taking first this turning and then according to our fancy, and with no other thought but the preference of the moment. We eventually turned up at Horsham. For all that we knew or cared, indeed, we arrived at Horsham. We had to ask the name of the town, for we had no idea of it. Such desultory travel may not commend itself to others, but it commended itself to us. There was such a delightful feeling of irresponsibility about it. When you travel by rail, you have taken to a place by despotic line. When you go roving by road, you may arrive anywhere. Horsham calls itself the capital of the Weald. It is something for so small a town to boast of the title capital. The village church of Alfriston, hidden away in the coombe of South Downs, also proclaims itself to be the cathedral of the Downs. So important by title becomes the unimportant. And I should say, I don't know if this is staggering where you are, the imagery on the screen. It's staggering here for some reason. Horsham is is my formative place where I grew up, in Horsham, when I was from 5 to 18. So work out how many days that is. Quite a few. And I, from 5 to 18. And I lived there going to 2 different schools. Well, nursery school and primary school and secondary school. Of course, I was there some 50 years after this took place. Horsham is a clean, neat and pleasant enough little town of many charming old houses with a modern growth around many commonplace ones. Without the latter, Horsham would be wholly delightful. As country towns grow, they did not grow more beautiful, nor do our cities, though they grow more stately. The old Horsham houses are roofed with local stone, well, Horsham stone as we would call it, flat slats of delicious warm grey, having a rough surface that encouraged the growth of gold and silver lichen. And so a roof of it in time becomes a thing of beauty, as does the lovely stone roofs of the Cotswold country. There is, I think, no roofing covering so charming to the eye than thin split stones when good in colour, especially when sized down as in old buildings, the smallest at the top and the largest ones below in orderly array. Each stone varies slightly from the other in tint, so that the whole forms a most exquisite mosaic. Modern houses, owing to the cheap transport facilities provided by railway, are mostly covered by thin, mean-looking slates, as these cost somewhere less and easier to hang, but are monotonously, he says 3 times, trying to get the word out, uniform, surprisingly ugly and utterly out of harmony with the mellow English landscape. It's funny because now, I suppose, if we were to see slate on a roof, we would think actually it was quite pleasant, unless, of course, you're in a place where every house is covered in it. So this is interesting coming to Horsham, and we'll see what he says about it. If you look down upon an ancient town from a church tower or elevated position, you can readily pick out all the modern buildings by their ugly roofs. I heartily wish nature had never produced the hideously coloured Welsh slate. It is the one serious quarrel I have with her. Cumberland provides us with a slate of a pleasant silver grey, but for some reason I cannot understand these are seldom used. I know a house in the South Country roofed with them, and it has an agreeable look. Though not supremely beautiful, still these grey-toned slates strike no discordant note in the countryside. As we drove into Horsham, we noticed a little rail enclosed green. Now, I've got to try and work out how he got in there. If he'd come from Hawley, he would probably be coming down through Roffey, one would imagine, through that way, or he came in through Pease Pottage. They would be the two most likely routes, I would imagine, having known the area. And let us just get the map up so we know what we're talking about. God, I will pack and take a train and get me to England once again, for England's the one land I know where men with splendid hearts may go. Right, so I do know where Horsham is, so we can surely come out of all of this. Come down, he goes through there somewhere. There's Hawley, or he called it New Hawley, and it will be down south past Crawley. I wonder if he must have missed Crawley, and he got somehow into Horsham. And now, Balcombe. That's Crawley. Lower Beeding. Where's Horsham gone then? It's very strange. Horsham is just below. There's Crawley. Broadfield Forest. Tilgate, yes. Tilgate Forest. Crawley. Lower Beeding. Well, that's very strange. Where's Horsham gone? Now, Cookfield, yes, that's Cookfield. It must be up here somewhere. Surely it must be marked on this map. Horsham, here we go. Here we are, here's Horsham. I found it, don't worry, don't panic. I've got it. I do know. Now, just as a matter of interest, I'll show you where I used to live, if you've got the time. So this is Horsham, there's the railway. And back in see there's Horsham Park, look at that. This would be, there's the Bishopbrick, this is the Guildford Road, Blackbridge Lane, and here, Hills Place. Here are two roads coming down now in modern day, and this is the cemetery here, I imagine. There's a Hill Place farm, which is a little further there, but down here was a road, and oh, that's interesting. I mean, I'm just looking at this. That would have been Hillside. I lived in Hillside. It was a cul-de-sac. Next to it was the Crescent, which actually wasn't a crescent. It was also a dead end. And then there was a little lane down here to Hills Farm, which is not marked. And curiously here, where the Butts is, actually was a bit of a car dump. It's really interesting. Sorry, I'm Blackbridge Lane. Oh, no, wait a minute. Blackbridge Lane. Da-da-da-dum. Yeah, well, then there was the farm here. And the sewage works over here. Hills Farm. Oh, wait a minute. Right, okay. I've got that wrong. I lied. Hills Farm. There we go. Sorry about that. I know you're not really interested. So Hills Place. Oh, yes, that's right. That's on the Guildford Road. There's the Farthing Bridge. So, yes, Hillside was here. And Crescent was here. I can prove that. No. Go back. Now I've lost everything. Oh, what's happened? Horsham. Here we go. Horsham, Millhouse. What? Hang on, sorry. Oh, you're going to hate me now because I've got all confused. Discombobulated. Here we go. Right. So it's, what do I want? So I'm saying it's here, down this lane. And if we do this, there's Hillside. There's the Crescent. And that's the... Can't go any closer, I'm afraid. This was all farmyard. I was brought up round here. And the farm was somewhere here. Where was the farm? Just there. Just there. And I used to play in these fields and Hill's farm. This was an old track. Used to come down here and muck about. And the Arun, the River Arun, is down the bottom here. Look at that. Isn't that... That's amazing. Anyway, so that's where he is. He's gone to Horsham, but the point I was trying to make was, as he came into Horsham, and he's come from Hawley, he may have come down here somehow. He's gone in a weird route on this whole trip. Nigel says, I was in that cemetery the week before Christmas. Were you really? How extraordinary. Anyway, that's where he is. Come back to the thing. Let's... How are we doing for time? Well, we'll finish off in a minute because I've been 50 minutes and I haven't really got going. And there's so much about Horsham. I don't know how many pages. Well, this is there's a lot in here. I'll just do a little bit and then we'll finish off. So, yes. As we drove into Horsham, we noticed a little rail-enclosed green containing a large iron ring fixed to the round stone and some ancient stocks. The ring, an inscribed board informed us, was Horsham Bull Ring. Now, I cannot think where that was unless it was in the Carfax. Last bull baited 1813. Seeing us stop there, a man approached, presumably unaware that we had read the inscription, and exclaimed, "You must be interested to know... That's where they used to bait the bulls." "A cruel sport," we replied. "Well," he retorted, "ain't all sport cruel? Fox hunting's cruel. Don't you think the fox likes being hunted? Not much, but fox hunting is a rich man's sport, and bull baiting was the poor man's pleasure. There's not much amusement for a poor man in a place like this, so he's driven to the public house. We are getting too soft-hearted." Then, glancing at our car, he exclaimed, "As for that, motoring is a cruel sport. I wonder how many dogs you've run over and maimed or killed." We smilingly assured him that we had not run over one. At first the man looked incredulous, and then he shot a parting shaft at us. "I see you be no sportsman," he said, and he went his way. I wonder if there be any truth in what Macaulay says. The Puritans hated bull baiting, not because it gave pain to the bull, but because it gave pleasure to the spectators. Hume also remarks, "The sport of it, not the inhumanity, gave the offence." Leaving the bull ring, we found ourselves at the causeway. Now, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop there, actually, because that is a good thing, because there's lots of interesting things to look in the causeway. But he must have been in the Carfax, and we will pick that up on the next episode, I think, in Horsham. So there we are. That will be good. That will be part 2 of Chapter 6, but it'll be Chapter 6, etc. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go and put some logs on the SC. Thank you for joining me for the last hour. I hope that's been of interest and kept you amused while the wind has been blowing or not blowing, wherever you happen to be. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and thank you so much for joining me. And we will explore more of Horsham, my hometown, in James John Hissey, in his The Charm of the Road. Till next time, thanks for watching. Toodle pip.